I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, everybody, welcome back to our Mix What I Like right here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, joined, of course, by the legendary Jalil Muntaqim, political prisoner, Black Liberation Army, Black Panther Party, theorist, philosopher, author, writer, journalist, activist. It's good to see you again, sir, and welcome. Good morning.
Assalamu alaikum, peace, paz, habaragani, jambo, guten tag, hafia dea, shalom, haping, iring, whatever your native language is, I greet you in peace and solidarity.
Right on. Love it. Beautiful. So I wanted to start with that because Killer Mike is again making some news in an interesting way for me in the work that I focus on a lot with buying power. And as I was putting this together, shout out to Skeptical Mantis in the Discord, who sent me a couple of screenshots from Jalil's We Are Our Own Liberators, where you talk about purchasing power, and was inviting us to have a conversation about it. And I know Killer Mike has used versions of it, and I'm going to play in a little bit a clip where he's recently been discussed being critiqued for his involvement in Democratic Party liberal political spaces, which I think is very interesting. But as I was telling Jalil off air, this was all just an excuse for me to get you to come on. So whatever the context, we can start here. We can go wherever you like. And then Jalil says he has to leave at 9:30, at which point I will get into some other stories. And then we're going to do an Answering Critics section today as well. So definitely stick around and call your friends who've been, as Killer Mike was saying, talking a lot of trash. And we're gonna respond to some of that. So initially I just saw the video and again, shout out to my man Marcel P. Black, one of my favorite MCs, and leading the Don't Rap Over Vocals movement. And he was sending me this video because he knows that I have this ongoing direct and somewhat indirect back and forth with Killer Mike, or used to, or did for a while, but at least indirectly, politically. And he saw this was Killer Mike's new release and thought it would be interesting, given the video I'm going to show you later and Mike's position on all of this, that anyway, so I thought we would start there.
Well, let me ask you, are we going to critique the hustle? Killer Mike's hustle. I mean, is that what we're doing? Are we critiquing the hustler? You know what I mean?
So we can start there. We can if you like. I mean, in fact,
that's what it sounds like. You know, it sounds like that we're critiquing the hustler.
Well, part of it is so I know you don't. I mean, so like a year or so ago, he and I had an exchange where, because he had, in fact, to this point of this buying power thing, he had put up a picture of on Instagram of him reading my book, but he juxtaposed it to a book he was reading from what's my man's name? Not Thomas Sowell, but another Black conservative economist. And I was like, basically inviting a conversation, because I was saying basically you can't agree with both books. And he was trying to say that he could, and then we ended up having a conversation on the phone where he talked about how he comes out of the Andy Young school and all this other stuff. And I was trying to say, but that's a flaw, and this, that, and the third. And we never ended up having any follow-up. I invited him to come on this platform. I invited him to have a discussion. He never did. And a lot of what he did on the phone was what he was doing in this video.
Okay.
A lot of the braggadocio, like, you don't know who you talking, like, I got the guns, I live off the land, I know the people, and all this stuff. What if you, and I was just like, I'm not going to sit on a phone and get into a, like, who does what and what. I was just saying, look, we just disagreed. Let's have, anyway. So we can do that. And then what I thought was funny is that, and I'll play the clip, maybe I'll just play the clip now and get it out the way, that when I saw this clip on Karen Hunter's show, where she's talking to LaTosha Brown of Black Voters Matter, I thought, and they're criticizing Killer Mike, and again, just to tie it up, Karen Hunter had invited me on when my book came out a couple years ago to her show. She hadn't read the work. She didn't really, I think, fully grasp my argument, and then didn't grasp the logical and I think too far left radical conclusions of my argument, and then ended up with some help by my dear friend Dr. Carr cutting me out the conversation and never inviting me back on. But what I was ultimately saying was, we can't use business. We can't, we can't business our way and money our way into catching up with the elite. And as I'm going to come to, this is what anyways. And what I was trying to say in the Buying Power book is that from across the political spectrum, purchasing power, I think, has been misunderstood. So I would argue humbly, and this is very uncomfortable for me, I admit it, to say to you that I think you misunderstood it in the revolutionary way. Others misunderstand it, I think, also willfully in a very conservative way. But my ultimate point is, we need radical organization. This is clearly you understand this, but radical political organization that doesn't rely on this idea that we got to get our money right before we can get our political power argument.
Well, I don't know. I don't think that I said that. I don't think we have to have that dichotomy between either or.
No, you didn't. I'm saying you did not. What I'm saying is, so in fact, let's start with what you said. Then I'll go to the thing with Killer Mike. Because what I'm saying is, my only
thing. Let me make this other point too, in terms of me referring to Killer Mike as a hustler. Sure. I'm not denigrating a hustler. Okay, I want to make that point explicitly clear. Right. It's just a matter of how you hustle and what you do with your hustling. Okay, those are the issues that we're concerned about. Right, I support hustling. Right, because that's how we have survived almost 400 years. Because I'm dealing with this system of capitalist imperialism is by various means of our hustles. Okay, and so for us, it's important that we direct our hustle into an area that is liberatory, right? That is emancipatory. That is about abolition. Okay, and if you're not doing that, then you're supporting your enemy. You're supporting either directly or consciously, you're supporting your enemy. And that is the concern in terms of our hustle, right? Does our hustle support the movement, or does our hustle continue to denigrate and dehumanize our people in a manner that supports a culture of denigration, all right? Because we find that more often than not, in terms of the hip-hop world, right, the rap world, what they are espousing, for the most part, is a culture of denigration, right? It's not a culture of upliftment, okay? And so when we see it, we call ourselves bitches and hoes and all these derogatory names, right? Those are not things that uplift us. Those are not words that support our humanity, right? Those are words that binds us to the idea that we're less than, okay, rather than more of. Okay, so for me, when I say the hustler, we got to put it in the proper context, right, and understanding what is going on here. All right, so we have those who are the middle roaders, hovering on the fence, and so forth and so on, right? And they got to get their asses off the fence. Okay, they're gonna be on one side or the other, right? So we can define who are our friends and who are our foes, right? Within the nation of Black liberation, within the nation of our own struggle. Okay, because we do have those who have been assimilated, right? And remember now, the 60 movement, the civil rights movement, was about assimilation. Okay, integrating and assimilating. And so we have many who have assimilated into the system, right? And what does that assimilation mean? That means you assimilate into a system of white supremacy. White supremacy. You're navigating, assimilating into a system of white supremacy rather than trying to destroy it, right? And free yourself, all right? So in this instance, for many, this hustling is capitulation, right? It's not liberation.
Right on.
And we have to understand that.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
Message.
All right. So let me just pull this up here. And again, shout out to Skeptical Mantis and the Discord community. I can't get to my books right now, so I couldn't get to my actual copy. So I'm very happy. And I honestly don't remember reading. I wasn't focused on this when I was reading your work initially. So, I missed this. So I really appreciate this.
Please tell people they can get the book at blackdragonmme.com.
Yeah, and it's actually, there's a link to it. Maybe it's not that particular one, but there's a link to where they can get it in the show description. If you like, I can update that link as well. But
it's blackdragonmme.com. third edition.
Right on. So again, I want to stress again that you're writing it out of a very different revolutionary context. So I'm not meaning to put you in all the. So I'm just simply, in fact, what this does is make more my point about the spread of this concept. And Abram Harris talks about this, and I'm going to come back to that too later on. So anyway, but you say here that we can and must recover from these setbacks and continue to function in total opposition to white power brokers. And since wealth and power in the context of this reactionary system of monopoly capitalism, we must harness and control our real economic power as consumers to at least begin to change the disastrous economic conditions in our own Black communities now. For while Black people wield an annual purchasing power of $300 billion, we remain economically and politically powerless. So one, again, even as I'm saying the purchasing power concept is not real and not, I think, properly understood in its origin and its dissemination, you are, again, making a very different point about it than almost everybody makes when they use it today. So so I'm acknowledging that. And in fact, this is, again, the point I've been trying to make for a long time, that the concept coming out of the turn of the century need for the elite to reconcile how much they can pay people to keep them from rebelling while able to buy the products they're created this mythology of purchasing power, which is misunderstood to be something other than what it is, which is only the ability for working people to pay for what is available to them by the owners of the economy. It is not an actual pot of money that can be organized and used in any way whatsoever. And in fact, if anything, it's just the total accumulation of income earned by, in this case, Black people, which is not, again, an amount that can be put together, pooled, and used in any meaningful way. But as you say, and then I'll stop here, your point is that that while there may be this thing called purchasing power, economically and politically, Black people are powerless. So again, that is the point that today that myth of purchasing power is used to deny in terms of the political and economic powerlessness. So if there's, that would be it for me in terms of my response to what you've done or what you were doing then or anything like that. But nowadays they're saying it's, about to be $1.9 trillion. And particularly the Black capitalist world and the Black liberal political world continues to go nuts over this, because the Black press, in an attempt to capture more ad revenue by promoting this, continues to confuse, I think, Black audiences into what all of this means. So let me stop there.
All right. I understand. We do understand the capitalist imperialist imperative, right? And that means to have money to make more money, okay, primarily. But the question for us is, what do we do with the money that we have, right? How do we use that money? How does that money become a part of our emancipatory positions in regards to our struggle, right? For the most part, we have no clue. Right, so therefore, that's the problem we have with the issues of reparations, right? The issue of reparations is, do they give us a pot of money? And if they do so, give us a pot of money without having changed our social consciousness, our political consciousness, what are we going to do? We're going to give the money right back to them, right? Because we live in the capitalist, we've been taught and indoctrinated within the capitalist social order. And therefore, for us, that purchasing power, if it's not defined, right? If it's not organized, right? Then ultimately what it means that you're assisting and being part of your own oppression by adhering to the ideals of capitalism and imperialism. Okay, so for me, in terms of the idea of arguing for our purchasing power, I'm saying, how do we collect ourselves? How do we unify ourselves in terms of how we use our being consumers in a capitalist system? How do we promote our struggle being a consumer in a capitalist system? Right, and therefore, for me, the purchasing power has some means for which we can use it as strategically use it in terms of building up our political base, political power base. All right, as for example, electoral politics. Right, I'm not a fan of electoral politics. okay, off the cuff. But I understand electoral politics as a method by which we can raise consciousness in being a descent to the status quo political arena. All right. So therefore, what we do like what they did in Jackson. All right. We organize our people so we can elect our own people to govern, right? Within the structure, I know it's problematic, I understand that, right? Within the structure from which we organize it, it is temporarily, only to the extent that we raise consciousness to gain power, okay? We have to understand what power is. For the most part, we do not, right? As an overall group, outside of the context of the capitalist imperialist system, all right? And so for us to build towards national liberation, to build towards independence, we have to use what is available to us at this point in time in this part of our own history, history of resistance and the legacy of resistance in this country. And so for me, how do we generate our economic power to support our political goals and objectives? All right. So we have to harness our consumer power. We have to be able to, as the Palestinians do, my dear brothers and cousins in the Palestinian movement, BDS, right? That's harnessing political power. That's harnessing economic power. BDS. Who do we boycott? Who do we divest from? Who do we sanction? Okay, in regards to the issues that are most our need for us to address. All right. And if we do so, we use our economic power in that capacity, it lends to our political goals and objectives, all right? By identifying these political enemies, identifying these political or economic subversions, all right, to our struggle, all right? So for us, it is extremely important to understand our economic power in the context of our revolutionary movement. Right, and that's what I meant when I talked about in the book here.
No, again, clearly, the only thing that where I would disagree is that, so when you say we have to use what we have, make use of what we have, my point is there is no such thing as purchasing power. There is no consumer power in this way, and I think this is one of the things. This is one of the pieces of this struggle that has become, for me at least, maybe too much of a focus. But so my point is, if the goal is to raise consciousness, because that's all that could be done here, there's no material benefit to it. I would prefer that the argument be, we don't have purchasing power, we don't have buying power, it doesn't exist, it's not real. So we need to do many other things that you do talk about in your book, which is one of the reasons why I think people like me and others walk over these points when particularly you and others might say them, because the broader analysis is so on point and more inspiring and frankly even more interesting. But again, so that would be my point, that this is not something that can be used other than a concept that could be that we could use to attack, to raise political consciousness and awareness about the actual economic position. Because, even if we were to make comparisons to BDS doesn't work if people are not politically organized, and if, for instance, the United States and its allies can keep funding and supporting Israel without any interruption. So it's not going to have the impact that I think people might fantasize about or hope for. So that's all I'm saying in terms of our situation, or in terms of black people's situation here in the United States. I would much rather people say, look, this stuff isn't real. And that's why I thought that really, I've said that I think George Jackson is the only one I've seen actually really deal with this argument properly, because he just passes over, quickly says, every time they say we have more purchasing power, they increase the cost of the goods that we're asked to buy, and it wipes out any idea that we have any economic power in that way. So we just need to get more focused on your broader arguments and organize, I think, differently. So that would be that's it. So again, I'm not putting you in a category here. And I admit this is a little bit of a difficult. I admit I struggle with this. It's a little humbling and difficult for me to sort of sit in front of you virtually and say in any way I disagree with you.
Okay, but, no problem. No problem. I appreciate disagreement. I always ask for constructive criticism. You know what I mean? Because that's only going to make me better. So I appreciate that. And this debate is important. I see when we have a difference in terms of tactical. rather than strategic, right? How do we apply whatever purchasing power? You said we don't have any. I disagree with that. I think we do have purchasing power, but it's not organized. It's not collective. We have purchasing power when we buy these cars and buy these houses and buy these clothes, and Killer Mike is draped in these gold trinkets that he's wearing to indicate his wealth. All right, that's purchasing power. Okay, so what I'm saying to us, all right, as a people, right, we need to harness whatever purchasing power that we have, consumer power that we have, and direct it to areas that serves our people, that serve our interests. Okay, and that's tactical. But you're saying that we don't have any purchasing power at all. We don't have any consumer powers at all.
Because the phrase itself,
we are poverty stricken. We are poverty stricken to the point of disenfranchisement. And therefore, for us, in my understanding, what you're saying is that we need to become enfranchised before we can have purchasing power. And I think no, it doesn't work that way. I think it works that we have to be in correspondence with each other. They have to be united with each other in terms of both the tactical and strategic goals and objectives. What is strategic goals and objective, right? We haven't even verified or affirmed confirmed what is the strategic goal and objective. I said the strategic goal and objective is freeing the land. Okay, I believe in independence and sovereignty of Black people. All right. There's a lot more to be said about that. As a matter of fact, there's some comrades who are submitting a document to the United Nations demanding that the United Nations of the world recognize the Black Belt South as the traditional homeland of Black people here in Turtle Island, which you know as the United States. All right, that's a powerful move to make. If we can get the world just to look at the Black Belt South and say this is the traditional homeland for 400 years. Black people have resided in this particular areas, right? Particularly South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, right? These are areas where we are still can be the majority of Black people live, New African people live in these particular areas. So why not have the world recognize that as being the traditional homeland of Black people here in Turtle Island? Okay, and in so doing, right? We need to therefore create what we call the exodus back to the land, right? As we've been forced out of the land by virtue of Reconstruction and everything that happened after Reconstruction and those two major migrations out of the Black Belt South, right? That we need to return back to the Black Belt South and bring whatever consumer power that we have, consumer purchasing power we have to those areas, right? And if we should do so strategically, right? We would, in fact, begin to find ourselves economically stronger because it'd be collective, it'd be concentrated.
So let me just pull up another section from your book, because I think in some ways you perfectly capture the contradiction here, because again, purchasing power is a concept it's a concept created by the political and economic elite at the turn of the century to assess the working people's ability to buy the products that those in power make available. So it's not a power in the sense that I think many of us, you or I or any one of us, think of it in the term power. It's a power to, as Fanon used to talk about, for the colonized to buy the trinkets that are made available to them. And so in this section here, I think you kind of get more to that contradiction. You say here, as a dispersed and colonized nation within America, we are collectively supporting corporate capital to the tune of $300 billion in annual purchasing power. Yet what we ourselves control, manufacture, or produce is negligible.
Mm-hmm.
We are basically laborers and consumers. A tiny percentage of this multi-billion-dollar consumer power serves to secure or develop our Black communities. Rather, most of these billions are used to purchase goods manufactured and retailed by those who influence and or control the political apparatus that keeps us powerless and oppressed. So that's my point. You actually get to the contradiction right here. This is deep to me. So when you say we can harness our purchasing power, it misses it's wrong because of what you just said there. We don't have control over the manufacturing centers in terms of the capacity to produce the amounts of goods and at levels that we actually need. Where Black people have business access. It's in service industries and beauty and hair and low. We don't have the ability. We don't have access to any of the major sectors of the economy to produce what an actual nation would need to survive. So that's why I'm saying the purchasing power can't be harnessed in any meaningful way, because one, even if you compare it to other communities, it's still only 1/8 or 1/10 of what other communities have. The LGBTQ community is recently defined as having a purchasing power akin to Black people. So because they're defined by marketers and advertisers in that way. The disabled community I was just sent a report, shout out to Liz Jackson, is being defined as having a purchasing power, actually more, I believe, than Black America has. And again, what does the disabled community mean in terms of a nation of people? So, but they're just a demographic to be marketed to. So it's not an economic strength that we could push in any other direction. So that's why I'm saying the objectives, your goals, I agree with. I'm just saying we can't use purchasing power as a mechanism to get there unless we're using it as a target to say this is a falsely constructed concept that we're misunderstanding, and we're being encouraged to misunderstand so that we don't get to the levels of analysis that you are trying to get us to. So anyway, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, right? In terms of the disagreement. However, what you do not do is show us how we can actually harness whatever the economic strength or weakness that we have. How do we harness it and put it in the direction we want to go to? I attempted to do so in my writings, right? Direct how this consumer, this language that we have that we're talking about, consumer power, economic power, and so forth and so on, right? I tried to create a mechanism from which we can understand it that serves our emancipatory and liberatory goals and objectives. Okay, so I'm in agreement with you that we don't have no major manufacturers. I was listening to what's that guy's that comedian's name? Damn, I forget his name. I think it started with a K. But at any rate, he wanted to talk about pimp down, that dude.
Not Kevin Hart, but what's his name?
Yeah, so anyway, he was talking about the fentanyl. He said, man, talking about the fentanyl, Black people don't make fentanyl, okay? You know what I'm saying? We die from this stuff, and we don't even make it, all right? Very similarly to a much other stuff that goes on in the economics of capitalism, right? We're not creating anything, right? But we're dying from a lot of it, okay? So for us, it's extreme. Cat Williams, that's the name I'm talking about. Thank you, Yipper. Cat Williams. I listened to him the other day, laughing my ass off, right, with his silly ass. But anyway, so that he makes that point, right, that they are creating products, right, that is, for the most part, is destructive to us, all right. So yes, we need to figure out ways how to. If we're gonna build a nation, if we're actually building a nation, right, then we got to build some economic power, all right, in terms of that nation. And this is what my point is. That's my point is, in terms of whether or not we do or do not have, as you said, we do not have consumer power, right? I'm saying that we have the means for which whatever money that we have bringing in, right, whichever way we bring it in, whether it's hustling or working, menial manual jobs, or being an entrepreneur, etc., right? There has to be a political, ideological foundation in support of that economic determination, right? And if we don't have that, then the only thing we do is playing into the capitalist imperialism and playing into our own oppression.
And that's the part I agree with, and that's all I'm saying. So I don't have a solution. My cop-out solution in my official argument is that we go for the political power that redistributes whatever wealth is made. That doesn't create a nation, though. That doesn't do what you're talking about doing. I don't know how to do that. I just think that the only way to get to what you are talking about, and the only way to really build that consciousness, is to destroy this one concept.
Okay, let me put this point. Let me put this point explicitly clear, right? Sure. In order for us to destroy this system of oppression, right? We're gonna have some money, because they got billions and billions and billions of dollars to keep us oppressed. All right. So I don't see how we can afford. I'm using that word deliberately. Afford a revolution without no money. All right.
So again, the answer isn't in trying to catch up to those billions of billions. We're never going to catch up to that.
No,
so the answer is, so I always joke, and I always say, and because I'm sensitive to this, because it was my job in the military, and I would have been in trouble at the end of this movie. But if people watch the end of Syriana, I'm not encouraging the action. I'm encouraging the idea of how you approach a bigger target. And it's not in, as you know better than me, it's not in conventional straight up warfare. It's indirect. It's so that's why I'm saying we have to address it this way. So I don't really know what to do, but we're not going to catch up economically. We're not, but again, my point is they had me on a 50 cal machine gun on an aircraft carrier only because the high technology of that massive warship could not track the low intensity warfare of slow moving boat or aircraft. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is it needs to be our approach. We can't go straight up with JP Morgan and them.
We cannot.
So all right, let me play this. Go ahead.
Our strength is in our unity. Our strength is building our greatest unity that we possibly can.
Yes.
That is our strength. We have unity in numbers, right? And then what comes with those numbers comes the purchasing power of consumer power with those numbers as well. Now, how do we use that? That's the problem that we have in here, my dear brother, right? The problem we have in here is that you saying that we can come to the party and be broke as hell and still be able to fight. I'm saying, no, we can't do that. Right?
The numbers that we bring.
We got to buy the TE. We got to get the TE in order to do the work that needs to be done. Okay, and if we don't have the possibility of getting that TE, then we're done. Okay, so whatever pennies that we have, right? Break the penny bank. If we got a penny bank, break the penny bank and buy a bullet. Oh, that's what I'm saying. Okay, break the penny bank and be able to feed our people, right? When we talk about, for instance, free breakfast program, the Black Panther Party, right? We had to go around, scrounge around and get food and stuff. We had to go chase down some businesses and say, yo, y'all got to donate because we got hungry people in our community, right? Right now, I live in Rochester. Rochester is the second worst hunger geographically in the country, right? Where's the purchasing power? Where's the money? Where's the consumer power?
But again, think about it today. Today, that tactic wouldn't work. One, because the black businesses that black people or the businesses that black people would be going to in their community are either owned by conglomerates, so they don't need to listen, or can be replaced by conglomerates, or are dealing with enough cash and economic exchange that could be used to actually do something of real meaning to the movement or for the people. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. We could all show up with our pennies in our piggy banks, but that's not going to be enough money to do the work that we need to do. So we have to come up with other tactics and means to make use of that collective power that we do have in terms of people power. It's not going to be we're not going to be able to marshal the kind of economic strength. And then the other point, so even think about what you said, use our pennies to buy bullets. Well, one, a lot of what people spend and is counted as purchasing power by the people who created that concept is being spent on either credit or is being used to satisfy the basic needs to survive. So people would have to either find a way to make purchases illegally or that are not sanctioned, rather, because you can't take a loan for a car and buy a gun. You can't take a credit card and buy enough bullets that are not being manufactured by people in solidarity to the tune where we would have enough to do the kind of work that, so in other words, we're not going to reach parity with the US military. So, or even its militias. So we need to, that's why I'm saying we need to find ways to take that if what I'm suggesting is we take a critique of purchasing power, of buying power, and all these other concepts to develop the unifying politics. Once we have the numbers, we don't need money in that same way. Obviously, we need some resources to do some things, but this idea that is, I think, in the minds and taken to the conservative wing is that we can catch up.
No, that's not possible. But in terms of nation building, right? We have to have economics, we have to have social, we have to have culture, we have to have politics, and we also have the capacity to defend ourselves and to achieve our goals that we want to achieve. So for me, it's important that we strategize in terms of how do we unify as best we possibly can, because we don't have a major benefactor. We don't have a Oprah Winfrey or a Jay-Z, sponsoring our struggle for liberation and independence. That's not going to happen. Okay. But however, we can look in history. We look in history and other liberatory movements, anti-neocolonial movements, right? People fighting against U.S. imperialism, right? How did these people, as El-Haj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X says about Vietnam, he had these rice eaters, right? These rice feeders, right, with tennis shoes and a rifle. You know what I'm saying? And kick the United States out of their country. Okay, so don't tell me what we can't do. Right? Show me how we can do. Okay?
But they weren't talking about organizing their consumer strength. That's not what they did.
Listen. No, they may not. I disagree. I think Ho Chi Minh did write about his the necessity for economic empowerment of the Vietnamese people, right? Especially the so-called Viet Cong, all right, and their struggle for liberation. There has to be a means from which we can ensure that we have economic sovereignty.
But again, what I'm not, I don't disagree with you, but what I'm saying is, one, I don't know. First of all, Vietnam then or now doesn't have economic sovereignty.
No, they don't.
What they did have that we don't have is land. They had a national consciousness at a level that I don't think Black people have been quite able to build at this point. It's been assaulted in different ways, obviously. And then ultimately, for whatever they didn't win in the sense that of a victory that we would want. I mean, so I don't, and what sustained them against the French and the Chinese and the Americans and whoever was not, again, consumer power. It was a national consciousness.
Well, that's clarity of their mission. See, what are you doing, my dear brother? You're taking consumer power and economics out of the arena, right, of the political and the social and the culture. Okay, you saying that this economic issue, right, or this consumer power issue, right, is a separate, distinct issue that has to be addressed alone or in isolation than the other parts of our struggle. And I'm saying no, they have to be holistic. We have to have a holistic approach. We have to use the economics. We have to use the politics. We have to use the social. We have to use the culture. And in some instances, we have to use even the faith-based or religious, right? And to be a holistic in terms of our overall struggle. And so for me, right, and as well as for you, right, we're trying to figure out how do we use whatever penny bases we have, right, and direct it towards our struggle in the most efficient way, right, that we can. Okay, and so for me, what I wrote in my book, right, we're on Liberators, it speaks to those issues, right? Whether we define it as consumer power or just having penny banks, okay, I don't care how you want to define it, right? Well, ultimately, what we're saying is that we got to collectivize our monies, okay? We have to figure out ways how to concentrate our economic capacity to support our struggle. Because without it, won't be no housing, won't be no feeding our babies, won't be no clothing our children, right? And won't be no real education for our people, okay? And so we have, economics is important, right? It is important, all right? And we have to figure out some kind of ways to use economics in the revolutionary context, okay? Towards emancipation, liberatory, and being abolitionists, right? And if we can do so, if we can figure a way how to do so, then we'll be halfway to where we need to be. Okay, we cannot have a revolution without economic power. It's not going to happen. Okay, and we cannot have economic power without a revolution. Okay, it's not going to happen. Okay, so those two things have to be in line with one another. Yes, we have to continue this conversation, this dialogue, particularly for those who are quote unquote revolutionaries. I ain't talking about these reactionary Negroes, right? The folks that needs to grow, those who have assimilated. They have assimilated into the system. To be assimilator, right, is in opposition to be a revolutionary, okay? And for us to be independent and sovereign. And so for me, it's extremely important that we critique our reactionary assimilationists, all right? We critique them and tell them how they are harming us as a people, all right? How they're in the line by their assimilation to a capitalist system, right? And therefore supporting white supremacy, all right? And so therefore, you know, for me, it's extremely important that we have this dialogue, have this conversation, right? And we use it in the context that we're trying to move towards national liberation and independence, right? Where do we bring whatever pennies that we have, whichever way you want to define those pennies, right? How do we put them and collectivize them, right? So that they have the greatest impact for our own liberation and independence.
Right on. All right. So let me do this. Let me play this. Let me just get this out of the way. Let me play this little clip. Let me bring it back and then give us something, another launching point for critique. Take a couple minutes, give us a little break here. Watch this, and then we'll take the rest of the time we have with you this morning for you to clarify anything about what we're going to see and anything else that I know you wanted to bring up for us to discuss this morning. And then obviously, I just say again, you're welcome here anytime. So whatever we don't get to or don't get to correctly today, you're always welcome back. So
listen, we need to have a program with me, Daruba, and Sekou together. The three of us together.
Yeah. I feel like I've been saying yes. So we've done a version of that. I've been trying to do more versions of that.
And Jihad
Kalaj and Kamal been trying to do versions of that. Let's do it.
Yeah, and Jihad and do Moment, all four of us. We be on a panel. We need to be on a virtual panel, the four of us, right? And perhaps a sister Dekwi Siddiqui Odinga, right? The five of us on the panel together. Let's blow this place up. Let's blow it up, huh? Let's do this thing.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
That's bars to me, Jalil. All right, let's absolutely. All right, but immediately we're gonna take a quick break, check out this video, and come back and wrap it up from there. Don't go anywhere. I mix what I like.
And all of the noise and nonsense. But Atlanta's own Killer Mike Render, said some things that it feels almost like I don't want to accuse him of being a paid operative, because I'm not sure where he's coming from, but it is hurtful. It's as hurtful as Kanye West saying, you know, white men are the most oppressed people in this country. It's like hurtful. It's hurtful and it's discouraging and it's disconcerting. And I don't know how well you know, Mike, but it feels like it undermines what you're doing.
Not only it feels like it does. I mean, I've canvassed with that brother before. You know, I think part of what winds up happening, and we just don't have to be honest with this, we have literally given the pursuit of freedom away for this pursuit of money. And if you think that money, of power, away from money, and let me say what I mean by that. You know, it's interesting because I'll talk to folks and everybody was like, well, you know, you got money, you got power, do you? Right? At the end of the day, you better get some power, and some money is an access to power, right? But I'm raising that because I think it's really important, because there are people who have gotten money, and because they've gotten money, they can't talk. They can't hang with certain folk. They can't say certain things, right? So it becomes a particular kind of space. Why am I bringing this up with Killer Mike? Because I think, you know, part of let me just say this about the brother. What he did at best was disingenuous. The bottom line is, if you know anything about Black entrepreneurs in this country right now, let me be clear. The majority of entrepreneurs, or people who are starting small businesses in this country right now, happen to be Black women. percentage-wise over any other constituency group, but are Black women. How you gonna have a serious meeting with the governor in Buckhead out of all of the communities in Georgia, right? With 50 Black men. Come on, bro. That wasn't even representative of our community. So number one, let's start there. Number two, let's start with, for our community, when we're talking about money, we got to talk about all aspects, right? You can't pay me a salary. That's like giving somebody a raise, but not making an adjustment for the cost of living. At the end of the day, we don't just need businesses. We need flourishing businesses. We need access to healthcare. We need make sure that we've got quality education. Let's talk about, since we want to talk about money, and Killer Mike is saying, he got this attachment of saying that he's been good at business. Well, how's he been good at business when this man literally, I'm gonna go, and he's been good, he's talking good at business. Do you know in the state of Georgia, where Black folks make 30% of the population, we get less than 1% of the state contracts? Now that's, Brian Kemp had 4 years to do that. If he was serious about it, I need people to hear me. We receive Black businesses receive less than 1% of the business for the state of Georgia, of the billions of dollars that we spending in the state. But then we gonna have one meeting with him with 50 Black men and some whatever they had over there in Buckhead, and he gonna smile, and we don't hold him accountable on that. In addition to that, healthcare, here it is in the state of Georgia. There's been 6 hospitals that are closed, Karen. We're actually on the verge of a 7th hospital closing in Metro Atlanta, right? That impacts working class people, not just having healthcare access, but who you think working at those hospitals. That shuts down jobs, that impacts businesses. In many of those communities, it's had a devastating impact, economic impact on those communities. But guess why those hospitals have closed? Those hospitals have closed because Brian Kemp refuses to expand ACA or Medicaid or Obamacare because it was attached to Obama. There's over $1 billion that is sitting there, federal dollars that we can get access to if he expands.
All right, let me stop it there. What I was really just wanting to highlight, and what I couldn't help, admittedly, getting a kick out of, is that personally, I feel like I haven't been. I had my argument around buying power misrepresented by Dr. Carr, with all due respect, on the Karen Hunter show, and I invited them to invite me back on to discuss it. Never happened. And I think one of the reasons is that my argument of starting on a similar point of critique goes in a very different direction, and argues that the political power that we need to harness needs to be harnessed outside of the Democratic Party. So that in other words, when Killer Mike sits down with Governor Kemp and wants to have this conversation praising him for what he's done for Black business, and then you have LaTosha Brown and Karen Hunter want to criticize Mike for having now sort of
capitulated.
Well, not only capitulated, but sort of broken the contract of organizing among Black people for the Democratic Party. That's what they're really upset about, because LaTosha Brown and Black Voters Matter, and I admit I looked this up, they make a nice little bit of change getting people to vote for the Democrats. It's public record, as is my salary. And I admit they make a good bit more than she and her husband, taking all this Act Blue money and whoever else money to get Black people to vote for the Democratic Party. So my point is in all of this is that in sort of going back to where we started, people take this, whether it's purchasing power or it's broader Black capitalist, Black entrepreneurial mythology, in very different directions. You were obviously advocating it for one very specific purpose. Here we see it again being held up for a very different, and I think very liberal, very soft politics. But at the same time, because Mike is so prominent and it is going farther to the right, they get to be positioned, that is Karen Hunter and LaTosha Brown get to be presented as is the case with the Democratic Party, as our only legitimate solution and salvation.
Well, that's not true. Well, we know that's not true. But in either case, yes, the sister that you talked about, yeah, they got a hustle going on too, and they're hustling the Democratic Party. right? And unfortunately, they're trying to bring along other Black people into this illusion of democracy when we actually live in a plutocracy. Okay, so that's the problem we have. As Al-Haj Malik Shabazz has mentioned by the Democratic Republican Party, they call them what the Dixiecrats, right? The Dixiecrats talking about the Democratic Party, right? And they both belong to the canine family, right? One is a fox and one is a wolf, right? But they both belong to the canine family. So for us, naturally, we have been taught or been trained, indoctrinated to align ourselves with the Democratic Party with the idea that it is for the benefit of Black people. No, it is not. It will never be, and it has never been, and it will never be. Right? It's always in support of the idea of capitalism. Right? How to collectivize or how to unify a population of demographics in support of the democratic aspirations of the capitalist social order. Okay, and that's all it is. Okay, and we have to come to the conclusion that the capitalist social order has never worked for the benefit of Black people, brown people, indigenous people in this country. Has never and will never. It will always be the mechanisms by which white supremacy will always be able to control, right, the economics of this country and therefore control the population by virtue of how the economics is being dispensed and how it's being used. Okay, so for us, it's important that we, again, divorce ourselves from the system of capitalist imperialism. And that also means that we need to divorce our economic, whatever power that we have, or our economic pennies, right, from the system as well. That's the only way that we can actually free ourselves. Okay, so for me and the sister who you met, they had that clip. I don't know her. I don't know the woman. All right, but apparently she very much is a capitalist. Okay, and a Black capitalist, right? The Kenneth McKissick capitalist, right? When he tried to build Soul City, right? That kind of capitalist, right? So we need to figure out ways how to actually train or retrain what I call decolonize, right? Decolonize our mentality from this idea of integrating and assimilating into the system of capitalism and imperialism, because it does not work for us. It never has and it never will. It will always work for those who have benefited from our labor, right? From the days of slavery to the days of menial manual labor where they continue to exploit us, right? Where we receive I think 10 cent or 15 cent off the dollar that white people receive, right? They receive 85% of the dollar. We receive, I think, 15% of the dollar, right? In terms of who we are as people in this country, right? We have to address those issues because we have to feed our babies, right? We have to educate our children, and we got to figure out ways how best to do so. Another example, and I'm gonna depart from the area that you talked about to another area what I'm working on right now, right? Here in Rochester, I work for an organization called Citizen Action, right? Citizen Action is a nonprofit. That's another issue that we have to address at some point in time, how these nonprofits are subverting the movement, okay? Yes, extremely so, okay? But nonetheless, I work for this nonprofit, and they permitted me to organize what we call friends and family and friends of incarcerated workers, right? I'm no longer using the term prisoners, inmates, convicts, those terms that keeps us in a mindset of legitimizing the system of incarceration, right? We call it our people inside incarcerated workers. We want to change the narrative. We want to change the idea from which they come from the lumpen proletariat class. They come from the proletariat class. They come from the working class, right? So let's identify them as incarcerated workers. And one of the reasons why I want to identify incarcerated workers, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Actually, it is a slave system. That's what it is, all right? So we have to really look at the penal slave system as it is according to the law. The law says it's a penal system. That's not what Jalil says. The 13th Amendment says it's a penal system. Ruffin versus Commonwealth says it is a slave system. So we have to recognize the penal system as it is, a slave system. So how do we counter that? One of the ways that we counter it, we have to demand that our people, the incarcerated workers, get paid for their labor. Okay? Now, 5 states has already changed their constitution to prohibit compulsory labor, right? That's what we try to do here in New York. We are going to build a campaign to end compulsory labor and ensure that our incarcerated workers receive minimum wage, right? We want to make sure that they receive money. We want to take this $1 billion that they've been making off our free labor, pennies on a dollar labor, right? We want to ensure that our people, if they're going to be incarcerated, receive the minimum wage as any other worker, right? We're going to end the slave system. We have to abolish. Slavery has not been abolished in the United States, in Turtle Island, right? It has been transformed into the penal system. And so for me, I'm calling for abolitionists throughout the country, right, to start demanding minimum wage for incarcerated workers. I'm asking people who are involved in the prison reform systems to stop calling prisoners, or start calling our people in prison prisoners, inmates, cons, and etc. Call them, identify them as incarcerated workers, right? Let's build a union, the union forces outside, right? We tell them that we have incarcerated workers. We want these individuals, when they come out of these penal slave system, we go right into a union, go right into a method of working, right? We want to ensure that our people, when they have come out of these penal slave system, that they have the capacity to contribute to our community rather than continue to be a liability to our community as the system wants them to be. All right. So for me, what we're doing here in New York, what I will be doing here in New York is building a family and friends of incarcerated workers. I'm going to build a committee. I'm asking anyone in New York State, who support the idea of abolishment, who are abolitionists, to please get in contact with me, right, and join me in this capacity, right? So there are 2 bills on the book. There's 2 bills pending in New York State prisons, New York State legislature right now, right? And one of them is to end compulsory labor inside the penitentiaries, right? I want that bill passed into law by next year. And the only way I can do that, I have to harness people power. So I'm asking people in New York State, if they're willing to join me, contact me, right, for this purpose, so we can build a statewide campaign to ensure that this bill is passed into law, right, to end prison slavery in New York State. Get it off the Constitution, right, out of New York State Constitution, and understand that we are abolitionists, right? Hey, I'm in the city of Frederick Douglass, Rochester, right, and this is our goals and objectives. We can continue to espouse the idea that slavery in America has not been abolished, that has been transitioned into a penal system, right? According to the 13th Amendment, which reads, slavery, involuntary servitude, basically shall not exist in the United States except for those who have been duly convicted of a crime. That exception clause, right? That's the 13 campaign, right? That's what we're building here in New York State. And
Jalil, by the way, forget the interruption, but do you have a response to this question? Your assessment and critique of the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee, the IWW's effort to organize incarcerated people into their own unions. I don't know anything about this.
This is old. This is not new. This is old. They've been going on for IWW been doing this for years. That's one of their primary political goals and objectives. No, we're not in contention with that at all. In fact, we're in support of it. Because my feelings is here. I'm gonna give you an example. Right, 2018. Right, I was put into the box. For teaching a class in Attica when I was in Attica, right? And I taught from 1861 up to 1966. I started talking about the Black Panther Party. When I started talking about the Black Panther Party, they closed down the program. It was an approved program, closed it down, put me in the box, put me in isolation for 4 months, okay, for teaching. And they said the reason why they were teaching because you're trying to turn these people from gangsters. I had Bloods, I had Crips, I had JDs in my class, trying to change them from becoming gangsters into becoming militants, become revolutionaries, become out of the gangster mentality, the criminals, right? Criminal mentality, right? Illegitimate capitalist mentality is the legitimate word that I want to say, right? Or define, identify. The illegitimate capitalist mentality, right? They put me in the box. So what does that inform us? It informs us that they do not want our people to change inside these prison systems, inside these penal slave systems. They want them for them to have the revolving door so they continue to go back to the street. So anything that promotes, right, the idea of subverting the idea of criminality, right, so that we become an asset to the community rather than a liability to the community, I support. So if we can unionize, there's a case called Jones versus North Carolina, where an effort was made to unionize prisoners, unionize our incarcerated workers. It failed, right? And in the course of the courts making a decision, they also ruled in support of Ruffin versus Commonwealth, stating that prisoners are slaves of the state, right? That's law. Okay, so for me, it is extremely important that we figure out ways how to revolutionize, and I use that word very liberally in this context, how to revolutionize the incarceral systems. Okay, and one of the ways to do so is to ensure that our people inside get minimum wage, right? That we prevent them from continuing to be used as slave labor, right? This woman, Kathy Hochul, who was the governor of New York State, she recently proposed that more corporations need to invest into the penal slave system. Why would a corporation want to do that? Corporation's primary goal and objective is to have profits for their stockholders. So why would they do so? The reason why? Free labor, pennies on a dollar. Okay, so now we are evolving the penal system, slave system, to be a corporate penal system to make more profits off penal off slave labor, right? And so how do they going to continue to make that happen, right? The school to prison pipeline, right? This is deliberate, right? We're ushering our people into the systems of penal slaves. That's why they try to close public schools across the country, right? Privatization and charter schools, right? Our people cannot afford privatization of schools, paying for schools, send their children to school. They try to close down public schools. This is deliberate, right? For the purpose of ushering our children, our people, into the penal slave system, right? School to prison pipeline, it is real, right? And mass incarceration, it is real. And so for us, in our fight against that, right? In this much, we say we want to abolish the penal system in and of itself. We're going to say that those individuals who are now in our incarcerated workers should no longer be forced to work without proper remuneration for their labor, period, right? That goes for inside or outside the penal slave system. So I am building towards family and friends of incarcerated workers. And if IWW want to support me here in New York State, tell me to get in contact. Let's go to work. We got things to do.
Just real quick, make sure I get this question in, and shout out to Quaker Anarchists for all the support of this channel. How will folks get in touch with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you if they want to support this and any other effort?
Sure, absolutely. They can contact Jalil Muntaqim at citizenactionny.org.
Jalil
Muntaqim at citizenactionny.org. O-R-G.
All right, let me see if did I get this right?
Jalil Muntaqim at citizenactionny.org. That's it. You contact me there. Let's go to work, yo. Let's change this. The law, the bill is already in the legislature. We have to ensure that we have the votes to get it out of committee on the floor for a vote to win. We can do that, right? We can do that, right? This is legislative work, right? This is nonprofit corporate work, but it has an impact on our community, right? Why? Because it allows us to raise the issues of penal slavery, all right? It allows us to fight against penal slavery, right? And that's important, right? Because it informs our community, the entire dynamics in regards to mass incarceration. Right? It's bigger than just the idea of just compulsory labor and getting our people a minimum wage. It's more than that, right? It's about the idea of penal slavery and abolishing penal slavery in the internal island across the board. And so my thinking is that if we can do it here in New York, it will be replicated across the country, right?
So you may have done this already, but can you expand on the connection between minimum wage for incarcerated workers and the abolition of the prison industrial complex? What is the connection between the two concepts?
Money. Raphael is money, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Take the money out. Take the money out. Put the money where it's supposed to go, to the workers, right? And what happens is that you'll find that people will say, hey, we don't need this penal system. We need to give these people jobs. That's a novel idea, all right? Why not give our people the economic empowerment we talked about earlier, right? Economic empowerment in our communities, right? So let's take the money, let's take the incentive, right? The incentive of free labor out of the penal system, right? That's one way of abolishing. Because for as long as they're making exorbitant $1 billion of free labor, then they have to start questioning whether or not they want us to work in this capacity, or whether the houses in this capacity or not, right? It is a housing problem. It is a population control. Mass incarceration is population control. Mass incarceration is the means for which they try to subvert and deny a movement of national liberation and independence, right? And so in understanding that, then let's do this. Let's take the money out, right? Let's ensure that this money they're making off our people, that money goes back to our people, right? So that we can feed our families, right? So we can feed our children while they are incarcerated, all right? Do things of that nature while they're incarcerated. No, it is tactical. It is not the strategic goal. The strategic goal is to abolish prisons across the country. Abolish it, right? But tactically, we need to raise our conscience and raise our people to understand the nature of the system itself, right? And one way to doing so that will hurt them to a certain degree is to demand the end of compulsory labor and demand that our people get minimum wage inside these institutions.
So that's why I still think it's funny whenever I think about this, but especially hearing you just break that down, that shamefully, it was only the one time I went to visit you when you were locked up in Attica. But I remember that when they asked me to put down on the paper what was my relationship to you, and I put student.
It's so funny.
And she said she called me back up to the thing and was like, "What is this?"
You're so funny.
You can't be his student. It was like, what is it? Because I was like, I'm not his, I'm not blood. I'm not his friend. They made me put friend. I was like, friend? That's not appropriate. I was like, anyway, that was funny.
You're my comrade for life, bro.
Comrade. I didn't want to put comrade because I was like, they're definitely not going to let me in there. So I just said, whatever you need me to write, I'll write. That's what I said.
Yeah. So
just
that's
real quick.
That's what I'm working on right now. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me hold that up again.
Yeah. This is my proposal. A call to action. Right. This is what we're building. Right. I need people to get down with this. All right,
right on. I mean, if you haven't already, feel free to send us a copy. We can post it or share it digitally as well.
Okay, we'll do.
I know you only got a couple minutes. Just a couple things here. Just looking at the Coco. Could you? I think I missed some things. Clarify which name prisoners don't feel comfortable with from your experience. KD says, I'm starting to think that incarcerated worker might not go far enough considering the language used in the 13th Amendment. Incarcerated worker equals cage slave equals worker equals free range slave. Interesting.
I like that, free range slave. It says listen, I won't argue with that point. That's not a point that I want to argue with. If you can come up with a better name for me to use in these terms, I appreciate it. Give me a better name. I can use it, right? But right now, incarcerated workers, they are workers. They come from the proletariat class, right? They come from the upper proletariat. That's what they are. They are workers. So if you can come up with a better name than incarcerated workers, then let's talk about it. All right. I'm not stuck on that name, right? But I think we need to define it something more than an inmate, a con, a prisoner, right? They are in fact slaves. Okay. The law says they're slaves. Nothing what Jalil says. The law says they are slaves. The prisoners are slaves of the state. All right. One thing we got to understand, and when they abolished chattel slavery in 1865, right? They recognized there was still money in the game, right? And so when they told the people, individuals, you can no longer hold people as property. You can no longer hold people as slaves and chattel, right? Individually, you cannot do that, but the state can. You see the game? See how they flipped that? They put the exception clause in that law, right? So you as an individual, you cannot hold people as property, right, as slaves, but the state can. Come on now. What kind of trick bag is that? And we've been dealing with this trick bag since 1865. Yeah, so we got to have new language. We have to get the language is determining our narrative and our storytelling, right? And so for us, it's important that we use the proper language to define who and what we are and what we are trying to achieve and the goals and objectives that we're trying to achieve. Language is important, right? I just give a book. What is that? It's language, right? The greatest book that has a precedent in the last 500 years is what? The Bible. It's a book. It's words, right? And we have internalized these words, right? This indoctrination. You see what I'm saying? And so what is important that we understand words, we understand the narratives, understand the necessity for storytelling, right? That is liberatory, that's emancipatory, that's abolitionist, right? And for me, in this instance, in regards to what I define as, or what has been defined by not only just me, but others as incarcerated workers, if we come up with another term that supports that, the idea of liberatory, abolitionist, emancipatory, then bring me that language. We need that language. Thank you.
No, right on. We appreciate it, and greetings to Just Seen It. Welcome. Listen, so anything else you want to leave us with? I do like this from M. Bold. We're fifth cousins twice removed, displaced, and erroneously incarcerated. That's right. I saw this one too, and I thought it was funny that all them DVDs has DVD in their title while they're talking about purchasing manufacturing equipment and take control of distribution of your product. There's something funny in there about a reference to what's the word? An out of vogue product, the DVD. There is no ability to purchase to purchase or develop the manufacturing capacity. Where would any of this occur? Black people don't even have any land. Where would you build this infrastructure? But anyway, Jalil, anything, I know, like you said, you have anything you want to leave us with?
I gotta get on the road at 9:30. But I just want to, one last thing I just want to say is this here. Is that as a result of the Spirit of Mandela coalition, right, a coordinating committee, we are building what we call the People's Senate, right? Extremely important. It's important for us to understand what is the impact of the decision of the international jurors on October 25th, 2021, when they declared, based upon their verdict, that the United States is guilty of genocide against Black, Brown, Indigenous people. What does that mean? I was in Athens about 3 weeks ago, Athens, Greece, 3 weeks ago, at the International Anti-Imperialist Symposium. And I told the world, right, at this symposium, we had people from Bulgaria to Peru, anti-imperialists from Ireland to Germany, and other parts of the world who was at the symposium. And our comrades in Palestine very heavily there engaged in the symposium. Right? And one thing I told them is this: the world will not be free until Black people are free. Across the board. The world will not be free until Black people are free. All right? Now, wherever Black people are, they're being degraded, dehumanized, devalued. I don't care if it's Australia or Germany. I don't care if it's South Africa or Canada. Right? the conditions of Black people, for the most part, is suffering under the auspices or the reality of white supremacy, right? So therefore, the world will not be free until Black people are free. I make that point explicitly clear, right? And what we're suffering here in the United States is genocides. No, it's not the same kind of genocide that happened in the Holocaust, right, in Germany and Jew, but it is a long-term, persistent denial of our human rights, right? Denial of our capacity to prosper, denial of our lives, all right? It's genocidal, right? And so we have to really recognize that our struggle is one of divorcing ourselves from the conditions of genocides. That means we have to divorce ourselves from the conditions of white supremacy. All right. So in this instance, there's a new narrative that we are arguing for, that we are building towards. That our struggle is one to divorce ourselves, to separate ourselves from conditions of genocides, right? Conditions of genocides. And in the process of we're doing so, we're going to try to build, what we're building is a People's Senate across the country, a People's Senate, right? So there's going to be some documents that will be coming out very soon, informing our struggle across the board, that what we're doing and what we're building toward is called a People's Senate. We have to figure out new ways to govern ourselves, right? Because this system of governing ourselves is genocidal, period. There's no question about that.
Well, listen, we as a platform, as a show, we stand by, ready to support, that work. So you can definitely keep us informed, and we'll look to support you in spreading that word and getting that work done. Jalil, you always welcome. Yeah, go ahead, man.
People can contact spiritmandela.org or internationaltribunal.com. Okay. spiritmandela.org or internationaltribunal.com and learn more about our efforts to build what we call the People's Senate. And also read my book. For those who don't have it, right? BlackDragonMME.com. Get the book, because we're going to be building towards rolling out Front for the Liberation of the New African Nation. We're going to start promoting the idea of building these decolonization programs across the country, and for them to link in a network to build a national front and rolling out Front for the Liberation of the New African Nation.
Right on. Jalil, thank you very much. As always, obviously, with you, it's an easy dub. We say to you, peace, because we know you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. So thank you. You're always welcome here. We'll catch you next time. Peace, man. Thank you very much. Take good care. Yeah, go ahead.
I just say salam alaikum, that's all.
Oh, wa alaikum salam. All right, right. Okay. All right, everybody. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. In fact, tell some others they need to come on back. Been a lot of comments, a lot of criticism, a lot of yippee. We're going to get into some of that and a couple other things before we wrap up here this morning. So don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. Come on back here at I Mix What I Like. Peace.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You play any and every position. From coaching, to kicking, to receiving, to running and juking. And, oh my goodness, I see that again in slow motion. Get off me. And you're going to have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you got to do is you got to shake them off, and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice.
Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it.
Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself.